Tirsa, welcome to the Material Talk podcast. It really, really is wonderful to have you here. I have been kind of a fan of yours in the background, especially with your Instagram. Tirsa has grown a pretty big following with her page Fashion Index, which we're going to hear all about. So, Tirsa, I'm a fan of yours and a big welcome to the show. And yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm really well. Thank you. It's really nice to be able to talk to people in general, but to new people that I haven't gotten to meet yet. So I'm really excited to talk to you as well. And I've been fanning on you as well. So thank you for all of the fun content that you're creating. And I'm excited to kind of share some conversation. And yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'm struggling in the social media world a little bit. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find it hard to be off. I want to be creating content all the time. And sometimes you create like a really great piece of content and you're like, oh, this is going to do so well. And then it kind of just doesn't. So you need to tell me some Instagram hacks. I said to you before, we're not sharing industry secrets, but definitely you could you could give me some advice there. But
Well, it's very interesting. Instagram or any of the social platforms, they want consistency. I mean, I think everybody's kind of aware of like consistency for sure resonates with the audience and the algorithm. And so people knowing that they can count on something like being present at a certain time or whatever. And honestly, I don't know everything either. It's a hit or miss with some of these algorithms, and they change often, and they don't tell you what's changing, and you just have to go back and kind of figure it out. But I think authenticity is the number one thing to be who you really are. People want to know, like, not only the out front, like flashy, I'm having a great day person, but the person who's sometimes having a rough time and like also working through it. And I think that really is important, especially in today. A lot of people, were like, oh, everything's rosy and perfect. And then when some people, particularly more well-known people came out and said, I have health issues, I have mental health issues, whatever those things that are going on, I struggle to sleep at night. All of those things are real things. And it makes everything a little more human.
yeah, I actually completely agree. It's about the human side of things. There is something to do with this human side. That's why, like you said, it's really nice to be meeting new people. That's important. So I completely agree that authenticity and growing by showing who you are is one of the key things. Okay, but we're getting sidetracked. Tirsa, I first want to hear about you. So can you tell us a little bit about you, your background, professional or personal? I'm very curious to know. Actually, it ties right in. It's a little bit about who you are as a person.
Sure. So I started in the industry actually going to college for fashion design and merchandising. And I went to a small school in New York State, but not in the city and here's the little backstory is I grew up in a small town and my parents were like, a nice girl like you doesn't belong in a city. I like that because I wanted to go to New York City. And so I went to school 2 hours outside of the city where they had a very good fashion program, excellent at the time, and it's kept growing. So that was only major you could go to for that time was fashion design and merchandising, and now they have a whole range of fashion program, a whole huge program, and lots of different degrees. And my school, we were the unique students in that, and this isn't necessarily unique to the school, but we applied to the school and then we had to apply to the degree with a portfolio and an interview. And then from there's like, I think like 200 and something, 300 students, they chose 80. And of those 80 students, those are the ones that started in the major with me. And from there, it was kind of that look to your left, look to your right, and those people won't be here. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we're all fashion people. We're all super excited. But it was a very tough major. And the director of our program didn't want to waste time on people who weren't really invested in being in fashion. And fashion takes somebody who really has a tough skin. I mean, particularly if you're going to be a designer, there's a lot of critiquing that happens on a daily basis. Sales are like going to blame you. Even when it's good, they're not, they're like, okay, well, what's next? And so there's just a lot of pressure. There's a lot of that. And so he really wanted to kind of toughen us up and those sorts of things. And, some of the things that transpired were just like, oh my gosh, I cannot even believe that this is really happening. ultimately, a lot of students didn't make it. They didn't make it. They realized it wasn't what they wanted to do, or they said this is ridiculous, one or the other. Um, by the end of the first year, we had 18 students, and they stayed almost the whole time.
Yeah.
A few of them transferred at the very end for other reasons. But yeah, it was awesome. So we were a very tight knit group. We did learn to really critique each other because our director would keep on going around the room and saying, who's going to be honest today? Who's going to really break this down? Ironically, and this is just a little backstory, my parents were selling and moving from a place they'd been in for 51 years last year. And I went through the attic like most kids. I had left stuff.
Yeah.
And a bunch of them were my portfolios from college that I couldn't bear to get rid of because they were these huge, beautiful boards that had that were watercolored,
Wow. Wow.
or marker. And they were enormous, like huge, like I don't know what size the sheets were, 3 feet by something. One of the assignments that I went through had, I don't know, 5 or 6 iterations, the same artwork. And I was
Wow.
like, oh my gosh, like I don't quite remember this, but I kind of remember it. I remember him keeping on saying, you need to redo it. And so then like years later, right? This was like over 30 years later, I'm looking at it and going, I can totally see why he made me read the first one. It looked kind of rushed. It was okay, but like not a lot of details. And then I went through and I looked at the next 4 and I'm like, well, some of them have some really good features to them, things that were a lot better, but other things that kind of like fell short.
Yeah.
And when I went and looked at that last piece of artwork, I must have finally been at the point where I was like, I am going to give it my all because I do not want to do this again. It was so good. It
Wow.
was so much better. And the funny thing is everybody was always like, oh, I think he really likes you. And I was like, oh, I don't think he likes me at all. But then I'm looking at this piece of artwork and I'm like, I think he loves me because he was willing to put up with me doing 5 pieces of crap to get a really good 6 piece.
Yeah. No, of course.
Right? And so I was like, okay, maybe he really did care about me, but not just me. He really cared about all of the students, which is why he was there and dedicating his time. And he brought in a really great illustrator who actually didn't know how to teach, but was a really great illustrator. Back in the day, that he was the person who did all of the Lord and Taylor sketching. So if you ever knew that their ads, that was the guy,
Wow.
Michael. And so we had that, and then we had a fashion show like most schools do, and we had really high-end designers, critics, and we had Donna Karan, Isaac Mizrahi, like lots of names that you'd recognize. And then Perry Ellis actually hosted and paid for our runway show. And so we had a great experience in school, and he was really all about teaching us the couture way of doing everything. And between junior and senior year, actually myself and my business partner, because she and I have known each other since college, went off to do a program in France and Italy with FIT. And so we had that visual behind the curtains kind of experience where we did go into couture houses. We did go into the best manufacturers and the best silk printers. And, we saw people basting stitches. We saw people pulling threads before they started draping their muslins. We saw all of those things. I'm like, oh, thank God that he's not just making us do this. Like they really do this, right? So we went to the rooftop and we did a full tour of their Hermes store. And so we just got to see a lot of really cool things. Coming back, finishing up senior year, and then deciding what to do, I immediately, of course, wanted to move to New York City, where I'd always wanted to move. Um, my parents didn't doubt it; didn't surprise them at all. And what I realized really early in my career, after only really having one job, is there were so many things I didn't know about the industry.
Mm-hmm.
All of this understanding about fashion, design, and merchandising, and I understood how it was applicable and I knew what I could do like in a career base. But I really wanted to learn the other part of the industry because I wanted to eventually, this is what I realized early, is that I wanted to run somebody's business or own my own. And I felt like I needed to be that well-rounded individual so that I could really understand what I would be asking other people to do and knowing when they weren't doing right and knowing when there was something better that should be happening. But I knew if I came in from just a design perspective, I was going to be missing all of that business acumen. And so I wanted to get that And now, yes, I could have decided to go off to grad school, but I was already in the industry. And I said, well, I can get real world application as well as I could get additional education. And so I decided to do education through career. And so for the next 25 years, I went and did just that. I worked design forward, learned all of the product development, all of the commercialization, all of the details, all the way through the processes, all the way through product going into the warehouse, product going to the consumer, product coming back because there was an issue. I learned to deal with all of that. I lived in New York City for a long time. And then I moved to California actually in 2001 because I had the opportunity to. And it is much more similar lifestyle to what I wanted to have long term. And I had taken full advantage of New York City. I really had done so many different things. It was a wonderful experience, great place to be in my 20s. Even better to be in my 30s in California for me. And I worked for really good companies along the way here. I worked for Warnaco, Fortune 500. I worked there when Linda Walkner was running it, and she was the first woman to ever break the glass ceiling of a Fortune 500, any
Wow.
Fortune 500. And so being under her tutelage, if you will, at that point, I was not a high up person at all, but she was a huge supporter of women. And anybody who hears her name and they know her, they might have really strong feelings. I'm just going to say strong
Mm,
feelings because she wasn't great to men, but she was really good to women. And so she would actually invite women into the executive meetings, even if their presence wasn't because they are going to bring some documentation or add a ton to the conversation. I believe she wanted women to know that they could have a seat at that table. So they could see themselves there because there's too many women who don't see themselves there and don't get to that level. The 80% of people who go into the apparel industry are women. 20% are leaders.
yeah. I saw that the other day. I saw it somewhere and I was like, that's shocking. That's crazy.
It's huge.
And
Totally
yeah,
shocking.
and it's a female dominated industry, but you just see pictures, it's all just men and yeah,
Yeah.
one
So
one woman if we're lucky.
exactly. So he really wanted us to see that we could be in at that level and in at that table. And so that was really, really powerful. And all the other back and forth is really irrelevant at this time. But having that early in my career, I was like, oh, I can do this. Like this conversation in this room at this level isn't any different than a little company. It's not. It's just bigger dollars and every decision adds up quicker, right? It's truly absolutely the same thing. There's some more logistics behind it, but then you have more support too.
Yeah.
You don't need to know everything. The best boss hires people who are smarter around them, right? And fills in for the things that you're not an expert at. And nobody can be an expert at everything. So it all works out. So I worked at Warnaco. I worked at the Limited in their actually Soho offices, which was pretty great. I worked at the Gap Corporation. And I also worked for in the middle, I worked for a lot of mid-size and even really small businesses.
Mhm.
I worked for one that was a mid-sized business, and we actually spun off my division, and it was just me and my boss. And we worked out of his his apartment, one bedroom apartment. And my office, my desk was in a suitcase. And so every night I put my desk back in the suitcase and it sat by his sofa. And we worked like that for 6 months because
Wow.
we were getting it going and we were trying to find another office space.
Yeah.
And then we opened a small office space and we took it from $1 million to $10 million in about 7 months
Wow.
because he was really good at sales and I knew how to get the product in at that point. It's like no thing. And when I told him I was leaving, he was like, I can't believe you're leaving. We're doing amazingly. I thought you'd be here for years and years and years. I said, Arnie, his name was Arnie Feldman. I said, Arnie, I would love to be here for years and years, but there's so many other things I need to do. And I will make sure to hire somebody and train them properly before I leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. And that was the right thing for me. And that's why I did it. And fast forward, I went to the United and was working for the Gap Corporation. And I started which is a really long story. I started in sweaters and knits. And then very shortly into my career there, they asked me to launch the maternity division. And so I was the production manager at that point, who was launching their maternity division, which was a huge learning curve, right? Because it's the first time I'd learned how to deal with the additional shape of a body and a woman's body who even she doesn't know exactly how it's going to grow, especially for a first timer. And
Yeah.
so educating your client of like what they're going to need in a few months, as well as making sure the product grew appropriately with them, because it's not cheap and you're buying a whole new wardrobe potentially for a short period.
Mm.
And so going through all of those sorts of things and making sure they're multi-purpose and et cetera was really important, and learned a ton. Going from there, I switched industries. And now I had at this point worked in very high end dresses, very inexpensive dresses, everything in between that I was just telling you about the companies that I worked for. So I had already had a huge product range. I worked in suiting.
Yeah.
And then from the Gap, I went and worked in the motocross surf skate
What?
industry.
That's cool.
And that really spoke to the heart of kind of me. When I'm not in the office, you're going to find me outdoors playing sports. Like that's who I
Right.
am. I
Okay.
love being outdoors. It's why California. I grew up riding horses, actually. That was my childhood. I grew up on a horse farm. And so just being outdoors is very natural to me. And the other thing that's really natural to me is like this give back community, which we can talk more about, that I do a lot of when I'm not at work. I think it's really important that everybody supports other people in whatever way you can. And so if it's financially, if it's with your time, I think it's really valuable because it makes you human and it helps other people who might need a little bit of a leg up. I mean, if you've ever been on a farm, there's always more work than there are hands. And so
Mm.
there were a lot of people who supported my parents and would like show up and be like, how can I help? And so that's my mantra always, like, how can I help? What do you need? And and I carry that through, like, from my staff that I've always worked with in the mentoring and coaching and conversations to like outreach. I actually volunteer with this company called Mentium and have for many years, and coach and mentor people who are in other businesses, not my own company, and usually not in my same industry. The last one I actually worked with, she works for Aflac and she's an actuary. So that is very far fetched
Wow.
from me. I understand numbers, but not like she does. And she has a huge passion for them and had been there for years.
Yeah.
But she was actually stalled in her career as far as getting promoted. And so that was all about developing her voice, developing her confidence and her voice so that in a meeting, people could hear how much she knew and what a value she was adding to the business
Mm.
in order for them to say, we should promote this person.
Yeah.
And we really had strategic things that we worked through to do that. And I'm proud of her. She did all of the work. I just supported her and asked the kind of hard questions and challenged her to do things.
Yeah.
She was promoted in about 6 months. And
Amazing.
so after trying to be promoted for 10 years, that's really great. And I knew she already knew this stuff. I could tell. I
Yeah.
could tell. That's why she was one of their only original remote employees, because she was really good.
Right. Trisha,
But
I want to
it's easy
ask
to
you
forget.
about, can I, just before, because I want to ask you about your business because you're like, this is all part of it. And I want to piggyback off this thing of like uplifting others. Is this really what drove you to start Fashion Index? When did you start it and what was like the catalyst? Because you've had this really sounds like quite long career before you even started. What was the thing that pushed you to start? Because you could have done, sounds like a multitude of different things.
Yeah, so my heart is about a give back. There's a couple of things. One, I went into consulting for a number of years, and what I realized is, because I did a lot of sourcing and supply chain, that was a huge part of that 10-year last corporate job that I had.
Yeah.
And then when I went into consulting, I realized not only, and it wasn't easy when I was sourcing in that company because the tools weren't there, but it really made it obvious when I was trying to help these other smaller companies, and sometimes smaller than what the numbers were that I had been working at. And there wasn't a good tool. There was like nowhere for people to really find what they needed. And the few that were really geared towards massive companies. But honestly, the massive companies had somebody like I was when I was in that corporate world where I did the sourcing, right? And so
Mm.
there was a dedicated person. But if you're just getting started or you're a mid-sized company, even up to like $100 million, there's only so many people you can afford to hire and only so many things that those people can do. And so you need really good tools in order to help people find what they're doing. And so my business partner, who I said I met in college,
Yeah.
and I wanted to start a business where we were really helping people to find those and make those connections. So like me personally, I also, and this is almost like a whole nother conversation, but I was born with a heart problem where they didn't expect me to live.
Oh, wow.
And I had a heart surgery at 4.5 months old,
Oh,
and I was the first one to live through that
oh
surgery
my goodness.
in the world.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you're here. Like this is
Thank
that's
you. Yes.
oh,
And so
that's
you can't
tough.
tell even on the camera, but
Yeah.
I have not one, but two
Wow.
scars right here.
My
And
goodness.
I'm not hiding it. I never hide it. I wear bathing suits. It just happens to be a nice piece of jewelry.
Yeah, it is fab.
But so I have always had a perspective of what's really important in life. And my mantra that I wear in my shoes, my biking shoes, my running shoes, all of the sports that I play, is failure's not an option. And so, I was always like a go-getter. I had a second surgery, open heart, when I was 10 because I had to repair the patch that they'd put on my heart the first time because your heart is only as big as your fist. And I was 5 pounds, something out, 7 ounces. And so that's like, the size of a small apricot,
Yeah. Oh my
right?
gosh.
Perspective. And so when at 10, it wasn't fully growth, but there was enough tearing of the muscle because of the stitches that they had to replace it. And
Gosh.
so then fast forward, before we started Fashion Index, and I started having some incidences of arrhythmias and then a lot of issues of arrhythmias and et cetera. And they don't know why. And because I'm the first one to live through my surgery, there's a lot of inventions and a lot of surgical newness. And I'm 53 years old. And so they don't have all of the research. And actually, until I was 30, I kept on going to my pediatric cardiologist for follow-up because they wanted the research. And so
Wow.
they ended up getting 30 years of research. And when I moved to California, I was like, I can't keep coming back every year to visit you guys. And they're like, no, we totally get it. My doctors traveled for years doing speaking engagements, and hopefully that really helped.
Yeah.
I'm in the medical books as far as that procedure goes, et cetera.
Wow.
That's
Famous.
that's part of my backstory. And honestly, for years, many years, I never talked about it, like out in the open in a recording or anything else. And actually, I haven't talked about it in a recording of my own, but I'm happy to talk about it here. The it puts a perspective in your life of like what's really important. Near death experiences, that's what I can liken it to. You start thinking about your friends, you start thinking about your family, you start thinking about your life and what do you want to be known for? Fashion Index is a way that I can give back my knowledge to the community,
That's
if that makes sense.
beautiful. Yeah.
That's why I personally wanted to do it and be invested. I want to help businesses thrive. I want to help small businesses thrive. I want people to be able to connect and build a community because community is how we all thrive together. And we can build each other up. So if somebody's having a bad day, which I was talking about being honest, and you say, hey, you know what? I totally hear you, but just grind through the day. Tomorrow's a new day. Hit refresh, hit restart, have a bad meeting, have a bad whatever. Don't get frustrated and down by it. Just be like, okay, what can I learn from that? And let's move forward.
Mm.
And so I think
Wow.
as a community, it's a lot easier to do that than it is as an individual. I do a lot of speaking engagements actually, and I was down at LA Textiles in Los Angeles, and so somebody in the audience said, as an entrepreneur, because I was doing an entrepreneur talk, how do you stay positive? How do you not feel lonely? And I was like, I never feel lonely actually.
So good.
But I was listening to the person. I said, I understand lonely because we do a lot of work where it's just us.
Yeah.
It's just us. But I also I talk to a lot of people. I support myself by going into our community and reaching forward to talk to other people.
Mm.
And so in that way, I never feel lonely. As part of Fashion Index, the other thing that I wanted to do not only is support those businesses that were growing, but I wanted to support the students who were coming into our community. And so really help prepare them for our industry. And so I do a couple things. One, I'm on a couple of advisory boards for schools to help keep the schools current. I go in and I speak to classrooms, both physical and virtual. And then I have a mentor program. And so my mentor program, I try to do everything very logically. Even though I have the heart of a designer, also want to do things to be successful
Of
in
course.
business. And so we brought in one intern the very first time, and now we have about 16. But I wanted to make sure that it really made sense for each person and they got the appropriate mentoring and coaching to
Mm,
be successful and to grow. And to also have that. And what I found is having that peer-to-peer teams was really valuable to them because that's building their network too
yeah.
at a much deeper level. And they can really help build each other up. And that's when we started talking about this. It's about building each other up and helping each other level up. I was just asked by a student who was part of our program in the spring to write a referral for going on to grad school.
Mm,
Now I've done that several times. Many of my past colleagues and students have called me like, hey, can I use you for a reference? Of course, I always say yes.
yeah.
But what I asked her is I said, hey, give me 2 to 3 things that you're really excited and proud about that you achieved while at your internship. Give me 2 to 3 things that you see as your strengths, and then close with why this degree, why go grad school.
Mm,
Giving me all of the things so I can see her perspective on what she thought were her strengths. And then it was easy for me to like write a referral, write a review. But that's really important to me. And kind of getting back to Fashion Index,
mm.
we try to do the same thing at Fashion Index. And so we not only have our platform, fashionindex.com, we also have a whole social suite. Most platforms, it's Real Fashion Index. And you can go and you can follow our community. And we try to highlight what's going on in the industry. We try to talk about, things that you need to think about as an entrepreneur, a business owner. And all of those things can be what's happening in the government with policies, what's going on with color trends and style silhouette trends, and just fashion industry in general, because there's a lot of things that are changing, including there's some kind of dissolving of seasons. Seasonality is not as important as it used to be. And so really staying in touch and kind of keeping people in tune of what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, there's there's talk of nearshoring in every marketplace, but is it really happening?
Mm.
And why isn't it happening in those areas? So we talk about all of those sorts of things, like what are your options? What should you think about? We talk about like how to build a tech pack. Like we have this whole blog series that we did on how to build a tech pack. We have lots of other blogs too about diversity, about designing for a full size figure. We try to touch on a lot of different topics.
It's amazing.
And then we have a newsletter that we actually put out, both one version in email, and then we do another version on LinkedIn. And so it's all about sharing our knowledge and really keeping everybody current and in tune
Mm.
and connected. And so loving the feedback that people give us, loving the support that people give us, hoping that if people need things, they're asking, and they're asking the larger community. And right now, we actually have about 1.5 million people who are hitting our platform on an annual basis,
Wow.
and that's from 1 million in the beginning of the year. So we've grown right there tremendously.
Mm.
And we have about 218,000 subscribers to our emails. And so that community is present. They want to hear it. They're highly active.
Yeah.
They open our emails, which I know some people are like, oh, but do they open them? And we have a very high open rate because we're very specific to content that we're sending to each segmentation, be it a retailer, be it a manufacturer, be it a fabric supplier, be it a student. Like
Mm.
we try to make sure the content we're sharing is relevant to the people.
Right. That's incredible. Really it is. And it's really great that you have a traditional background. I think you've really got something that not everybody today has. You've done, I mean, 20 plus years of really sort of grinding in the traditional
Yeah.
fashion industry. And you've managed to take that into the modern day. This is very current stuff, newsletters, LinkedIn stuff, like everything that you're doing. You've built an online community, you've built something in person plus online, which I think is not easy. And it is what we're going for. I mean, we're talking about this again, but you have a lot of heart, literally. For me, it just comes across as like somebody who really, really cares about the industry, cares about people. Of course, it's about the business as well, but it comes from a place of really wanting to help people, a genuine place. And that's, I guess, a huge part of your success. So it's really, really wonderful to see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the numbers, it is, it's sort of unfortunate and amazing in some way. Like once you start building this community, it really does give you a certain level of power. And I guess I want to ask you, what do you think about the industry and what does it need right now? I think it does need community. People really want to connect. People are feeling, I think, somehow a bit lonely. I think there are more female entrepreneurs than ever before. Not that they're getting all the funding, and that's also another conversation. But do you think, I'm very passionate about sustainability, but I know it's not always the easiest thing for small brands to do. Big brands, maybe yes, but that's one area that I care deeply about. What else do you think? What does the industry today need? What can we do to
Two
make it
things.
better?
One, I want to make sure that I give a shout out to Denmark because I did a piece on Denmark and the way that they really have a balance of work life and really support it truly. There are more female entrepreneurs in Denmark than in other countries.
Really?
So business countries should look at their business models that they're successfully putting together and really shout out to them. So there are places that women are being more successful and honestly balance of life is really important, right? We should not have to sacrifice one thing for another. And we should be able to be a well-rounded person and an individual with the support of family, with the support of government. And so I do want to say that if you're a female or a male, or of a different gender identification, you should be supported in your space. So wherever you live, wherever you work. And so I'm also really passionate. The tenets at Fashion Index are on sustainability, but really sustainability is a small piece of circularity.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really circularity that we need to get to, but sustainability that isn't like the talking buzzword, if you will.
Yeah.
And the evolution of sustainability is like super interesting. When it became true just buzzword, the people would come back from the boardroom of like, we need to be sustainable.
Yeah.
You guys need to tell us like how we can be sustainable. First reaction is, well, let's look at what we're currently doing and what's sustainable and let's market the crap out of that. But it wasn't sustainable because they planned it. It was sustainable because it happened to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if it was a hang tag or whatever, sometimes it's something really marginal. And that's where that greenwashing came from
Right.
because they weren't planning it into their business model. And so eventually businesses started trying to plan it into their business model. Unfortunately, what's happening to a lot of businesses, as soon as something goes sideways, out goes sustainability.
Yeah.
Because right now, yesterday, it costs more money. And so there's been a lot of conversation around sustainability. Sustainability is really important to the future of our industry. Circularity is even more important.
Mm.
And really getting to there where you're designing into a product that is intended to have an intentional end of life. What is that intentional end of life? Can it go into a landfill and actually break down into nothing?
Mm.
Do you need to have it some kind of take back program to where then it goes into a recycling program to where the materials get divided up and it goes into new materials? So that textiles to textiles is a huge portion of our future.
Right.
And so we really need to get there. And, I'm very passionate about sustainability, so much so I went to Climate Week in New York City this year
Mm.
and really was able to listen to other people to talk about the industry and to talk about the future. And there are everybody from industry professionals to financial professionals
Mm.
who were representing all across the board because it takes all sides to kind of come together. One of the people I really found was most interesting to listen to was Logan Durant from Tapestry.
Okay.
He has a really great way of speaking about sustainability, and he's done deep dives of month-long studies of the impact of sustainability and circularity to the future of their business. And one of the numbers that I heard was from Textiles Exchange was that we're going to be short so many units. I don't want to misquote the numbers, I think it's to 330 million tons of sustainable textiles by 2030. Like, it's a huge number, so I don't want to necessarily get those numbers
Yeah.
wrong. But the important part is that if we don't start planning sustainability into our businesses, we won't have that future. So we really need to do future proofing. So future proofing is planning a business model today that's going to provide a better future for our business tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's something that Logan really excels in, is breaking it down and explaining it to a boardroom of why we need to do this, and then getting their buy-in and building off of that. So he's their sustainability person at the company, but he has a really great way of thinking about it and articulating it to others.
Yeah.
Um, so like, he and a bunch of other people really inspired me when I was there, of, you know, other ways that we can approach things. So the idea of future proofing your business is really valuable.
Yeah.
And that means, and this is a finance person said this, is it's not putting it into today's margins. It's taking it out of the margins today and putting it into the cost of doing business.
Mm.
When you take it out of that and you put it in the cost of doing business, then it's a different line item. Your margins are still fine for today, and your overhead is still fine because you've planned a certain amount of money for your overhead. And this is just something that you need to plan. And as more businesses take on that model,
Mm.
it becomes more affordable to do sustainability because everybody's doing it. Once everybody's doing it, all of those non-sustainable products go away, and all the offerings are sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to get to, is where you and I aren't talking about sustainability. It's just part of business.
Exactly.
And it's just the way that we do things. It's much like, I was doing a speaking engagement with a woman who grew up in Mexico, and she grew up very poor. And now she has a very successful business that she owns and runs in Los Angeles. And she said, it's just how I grew up. We just reused everything. We couldn't afford not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And for her, it was an economical couldn't afford not to. But for all of us, it should be, for our future, we can't afford not to. And so then, like, back to Climate Week and listening to somebody, there was a talk, and she said, we're all here for sustainability, and everybody's heads nod. So every day, are you making a decision on every product and every choice that you do that's sustainable? Are you making that decision? Are you deciding to break down that annoying packaging that came with food that you're making and make sure it's rinsed off and properly put in the right places so it can be recycled? Like, that's just one simple example.
Mm.
You know, are you choosing apparel that you're wearing that it's sustainable, or are you keeping and reusing clothes that you can make today's fashion
Yeah.
from yesterday's fashion? Like, are you doing that reuse, rewear, repurpose? And so I think really thinking about all of that's super important.
Yeah.
The other part is about inclusivity. So an inclusive environment in your workplace, in your product, in how you talk about your business. Are you including everybody, regardless of size, regardless of gender, regardless of religion or coloration, ability or disability? Are you including all of those people in your community and in your thoughts of how you're moving forward, right? And I understand not everybody can have every product that's for everyone, because that's just not possible. But are you including the people that you need to include? And is there a product for all those people? There's so many niche markets out there that are completely untapped.
Yeah.
There's the silver generation, which I am part of
Mm.
as plus. And I was reading up on why it's called the silver generation. It's because your hair tends to start silvering.
Which is lovely.
But
Love silver.
there's a huge economic opportunity there that's not being tapped into
Mm.
for that marketplace. We actually have no affiliation other than a friend, this company named Joe and Bella here in the United States that we're friends with, who started their business because they were trying to buy product for their grandmother, I believe it was grandmother, during the times of COVID when you couldn't get out to stores. And so they sent a bunch of product to her, and then would do Zoom meetings, because that's how we talked to everybody back then. And we noticed that she wasn't wearing any of the product. And he was like, well, why aren't you wearing the product? She's like, oh, well, it's not my style. I don't like how it looks on me. And so the more he got into it, he realized it's a huge niche. And so he started this brand, Joe and Bella, to give people who are older
Yeah.
a chance to have a sense of style like they see themselves
Mm,
as an older an adult,
yeah. That's really
which is
important. Yeah, no, it's really important because
yeah, and so a sense of style and what they need, right? They
mm,
need maybe some magnetized closures because they have a hard time doing closures. They need a couple, they can't put their arms over their heads anymore. And so they just need some accommodations. And so to really think about people's needs and to make make product for them.
yeah, so important, really. And you don't people don't always think of these things because it's kind of like it's aimed at Gen Z, or like maybe the people think of maternity, like, mothers, but
Absolutely.
they're people who have forgotten all the way, like, kind of at different life stages. So I'm really happy to hear that these sort of brands exist. And I think, like you said, sustainability is such a buzzword. And I even said on another podcast, I really don't like the word. It's just like, it's like catch all, but I agree. Circularity and inclusivity, they're such important parts of what make up sustainability. So thank you for drawing those two out. And I would urge anybody listening to catch you at your next speaking engagement. Maybe you can tell us when that is. But Tirsa, you're just a wealth of knowledge. And like I said, you come at it from a place of such genuineness. I don't know if that's the right English word, but really I understand completely now why you have a big following and why you've done so well. It's because of the person that you are, accompanied by
Thank you.
all this knowledge. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you. Really, thank you for your time. Thank you, Tirsa.
You're welcome. It was really nice to talk to you, and I would love to do this again sometime for sure,
Yes,
both here on your platform as well as on our platform across our social feed, do recordings. So
I would love
I'd love
to.
that.
It would be my honor. I would love to. I think Fashion Index is so important, the work that you do and everything we've mentioned. So absolute pleasure. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.